1959, 60 years ago, Alaska and Hawaii became the 49th and 50th states. Vice President Nixon and Soviet leader Khrushchev debated capitalism and communism in a model kitchen at a Moscow exhibition. And in American theaters,
a bucket of blood. No, you're gonna shoot me! Don't shoot!
It was a great year for horror.
Come to the land of living dreams, where realists dream of the unreal.
Vincent Price was especially busy.
I'm Vincent Price, and you're invited to my party in the house on Haunted Hill.
I'm William Castle, and I feel obligated to warn you about the next attraction you will see at this theater. The picture is The Tingler, which I directed.
And on July 22nd, 1959, came a film like no other.
It is safe to state that the grandchildren of some of the people in this dinner will not be born on Earth.
Plan 9 from Outer Space and its creator, the late writer and director Edward D. Wood Jr., have become the stuff of cinematic and cult legend. There are many wild stories about its production, cast, and crew, some true, some false. Tonight we're going to separate fact from fiction. We're going to hear many of the strange tales surrounding this film, which has been unfairly dubbed the worst film ever made. So, now, we ask you,
can your heart stand the shocking facts about grave robbers?
Plan 9.
From outer space.
Ed Wood's magnum opus, Plan 9 from Outer Space, was his fourth feature film, and his third featuring aged horror legend Bela Lugosi. Ed first worked with Lugosi in his first full-length film, the semi-autobiographical and nearly undescribable Glen or Glenda.
Then comes the major surgery, the removal of the man and the formation of the woman.
Originally intended as a cheap exploitation film on sex change surgery, Ed Wood used his directorial debut as a personal statement about his own love of wearing women's clothing. In arguably his strangest role ever, Bela Lugosi played God.
Pull the string. Dance to that. Which one is created for?
Ed Wood's next film with Lugosi was far less experimental and firmly rooted in the horror tradition, 1955's Bride of the Monster.
You will be soon as big as a giant, or like all the others, dead.
Lugosi, along with hulking assistant Swedish wrestler Tor Johnson, conducts experiments in a swamp-side old house trying to create, well, let Bela tell you himself.
I will perfect my own race of people. A race of atomic supermen which will conquer the world.
But soon after, in 1955, Bela Lugosi checked himself into a psychopathic hospital, as they were called in the day, to battle a 20-year addiction to morphine and methadone. This rare interview was filmed the day before his release.
How did you ever happen to get on narcotics, let's put it bluntly?
Oh, I had a very painful ailment. My sciatic nerves bothered me terribly. I suffered very much, so I went to the doctor and he gave me some narcotics to cure the pain. That happened about every week once, and it helped me so much, it put me so much in a good state of feeling that I used it later myself, even if I didn't have pain.
Did you ever have any trouble getting it?
No, because the doctor prescribed it.
Bela and Ed Wood had become good friends over the years, and possibly to help motivate Lugosi to a speedy recovery, Ed gave Bela a script while he was in the hospital, with a promise that this would be his next project as soon as Bela was well enough to do it. Bela Lugosi would return to the silver screen.
Feel like your old self again.
I feel like $1 million.
You feel like Dracula really felt, huh?
Sure.
At his best.
I'm looking forward to work again.
I understand that.
I had an assignment playing the star part in The Ghoul Goes West. Yes, and Eddie Woods will be the producer. And
you're going to enter that as soon as you leave there.
Surely.
The only problem was no one wanted to invest the money to make The Ghoul Goes West. But Ed did manage to raise $900, and he used that money to shoot a day's worth of random, improvised scenes with Lugosi. Leaving a house despondent, sneaking into a house, at a graveside, and triumphantly stalking through a graveyard as his iconic character, Count Dracula. On August 16, 1956, Bela Lugosi passed away, leaving the world with one less classic horror icon and Ed Wood without his most bankable star. But it would take more than that to stop Ed Wood.
Ed was pretty broken up because of several reasons. One, that was probably his best friend at the time. And two, he had a lot of projects planned using Bela.
He'd be drinking his vodka, typing like crazy, smoking a cigarette, got the television on, all at one time. Then there'd be company around, and I don't know how he did it, and talk like this and type, and you sit there and you say, oh my goodness, oh, can't believe it, a dynamo.
He liked science fiction. Now, when Planet 9 was made, or Gravediggers, there was a run of people calling in, they've seen sources. He would capitalize on the behavior and the topic of the day.
With the randomly shot Lugosi footage in mind, along with the popularity of flying saucers at the time, Wood cobbled together a story about an alien invasion in which the aliens would use resurrected corpses as troops to defeat the forces of the Earth. He titled the opus Grave Robbers from Outer Space. All that was left was to find the money to make it. The Baptist Church came to the rescue.
Downstairs there was this landlord who was a Baptist, and his name was Reynolds. And he and Eddie became friendly, and all of a sudden Eddie had the Baptist Church of Beverly Hills behind him.
Ed Reynolds wanted to make a series of spiritual films for the church, but only had the funds to shoot one film. Ed convinced Reynolds to invest the money in his film, a sure winner since Sci-Fi was big with the kids, take the profits from that, and shoot his religious film series.
And my wife and I, we had just been married, and we lived across the street from the church in a little cottage on Weatherly Drive, and we went to that church occasionally, and that was where I met Ed Reynolds. One day he came to me about a year or two later, excited that he had raised some money and he was going to make a film starring Bela Lugosi. And he wanted me to be the young leading man in the film. And I said to Ed, but Bela Lugosi's dead. He said, he reassured me that there was a very genius writer-director named Ed Wood who had written a clever screenplay around some existing footage of Bela Lugosi, and he was going to use his chiropractor, who resembled Lugosi, to do the stand-in or the other scenes.
This is Dr. Tom Mason, Ed Wood's chiropractor and designated Lugosi substitute.
I'm Margaret Mason, and my husband was Dr. Thomas R. Mason, and he was a chiropractor, and he had just met Bela Lugosi, which Bela Lugosi thought he looked like him because they both had ears that stuck out.
Having solved the problem of the film's biggest star being dead, Ed Wood gathered his cast together and began filming in November of 1956. The cast included Tor Johnson from Bride of the Monster, TV and newspaper psychic Criswell, and Mila Nurmi, better known as her TV horror host persona, Vampira. The Vampira show debuted on KABC-TV Los Angeles on April 30th, 1954, 3 years before the national horror host boom began, making Vampira the very first television horror host. Immensely popular for a brief time, the show was canceled 1 year later, in 1955. By 1956, Mila Nurmi needed work.
A little man came to my door. I did know him slightly, Paul Marco, and he said, I got a script for you. And it's called Grave Robbers from Outer Space. Well, nobody was offering me any scripts of any kind. But then he told me it was Edward D. Wood, and I said, no.
Paul Marco played Kelton the Cop in Plan 9 and 2 other Ed Wood films. He also helped Ed find actors who needed work badly enough to be in his movies.
And then he pulled out a wad of fat wad of bills. It was $200 $1 bills. He said, this is a union film, and this is for you, if you want to do the picture. And I said, okay, sounds good. Then I looked at the script and was about to rehearse with myself. Oh, I was unable to say the words. They wouldn't even come out. I was so offended by the dialogue. So when Paul Marco came back, I said, I'm sorry, can I do this mutely like a vampire who's in a trance, just sort of zombie-like? Just whatever you say, we're using your name, okay. So that's why I did it silently.
Despite her objections to the quality of the script, Mila Nurmi agreed to play the quote-unquote vampire girl in Plan 9, the recently deceased wife of Bela Lugosi's character, resurrected by the aliens.
Ed said, he says, I have some Martians in here, and Tor likes you. He'll be on the picture, Tor Johnson. And he said that you won't have to do too much with the bit parts and things like that. He says, but you may have to have some help because there are Martians in it. Right away I thought, gee, this is a challenge for me.
Your space commander has returned from Earth.
Send him in.
You have your report?
We had to pull in here to Space Station 7 for regeneration. We're returning to the planet Earth immediately thereafter.
I don't even know why Eddie even used me, because I never got to do the Martians. He said, we don't have the time, we don't have the money. I was disappointed because I had sketched out what I thought would be best for these people, even the clothing.
Previously, Harry Thomas had created the makeup for Superman and the Mole Men, the pilot film for the classic TV series, as well as a number of other sci-fi and horror films.
Unfortunately, I never got to do it. They came out with the barbershop haircuts and the Oxford accents.
A combination of time and budget constraints limited the work Harry Thomas could do developing the look of the aliens. But here we get a glimpse of what might have been.
Plan 9. Ah, yes. Plan 9 deals with the resurrection of the dead.
Of course, the makeup department wasn't the only facet of production to suffer from a lack of time and money. Set design, decoration, and special effects were all done on the fly.
Normally, when I do a scene, I like to go onto the set ahead of time to get a feel of it, feel the props and the space. And I said, Ed, where's the cockpit set? He said, well, they're building it. And I kept looking, waiting for the cockpit to be delivered to the sound stage, a little dinky sound stage. And finally, half hour before this cockpit scene was to be filmed, 2 carpenters brought on 2 pieces of masonite board and bent them into an arch and strung a shower curtain in the back and drug over a few pieces of the electronic sets from the spaceship, and that was the cockpit.
On the desk of the supreme alien ruler, among pieces of discarded electronics, appears to be a fishing bobber taped to an emergency road light. Only Ed Wood knows what kind of advanced alien technology this is supposed to represent.
We had, for example, turf made from God knows what under paper grass, that had swellings and hollows, and one had to be careful not to trip on them, right? And cardboard tombstones and dried off twigs that had been placed about thither and yon. It was the general impression of a graveyard, but it was done with what I call spit and gum wrappers.
One well-known bit of lore about the production was the way the flying saucer effects were achieved.
There are a couple of scenes where it looks like there are actually 2 pie tins that are stapled together, and they went around with a string and just took these pie tins stapled together and tried to make a flying saucer out of it. And I talked to one of the guys who did the props. He said, no, we didn't have the budget for pie tins. We used paper plates.
Perhaps because it made for a good story and highlighted his ingenuity, Ed Wood said the flying saucers were everything from paper plates or pie tins to Cadillac hubcaps. This was not true. The flying saucers were actually model kits, available in toy stores and drugstores in the 1950s. The Lindbergh Flying Saucer, spray-painted silver and hung from fishing line. Another commonly held belief, now debated, is that the title change from Grave Robbers from Outer Space to Plan 9 from Outer Space was due to objections from Ed Reynolds and the Baptist Church that financially backed the film.
The film was made, and now the problem of getting the money from it. A meeting was called, and each of us who had contributed to the budget of the film was given a small part of what we'd put in back as we thought, somewhat of an effort to pacify us. We could not find the film. We did not know where it went. We did not know who bought it, as he said. His wife said she did not know anything about where it went. We couldn't find it, and so every person in it, or every person that gave to the budget, got back that little pittance that he gave us that day, and that was all. But one day, a lady called and said that there was a movie showing in Lubbock, Texas, and that it was called Plan 9 from Outer Space, and that I was in it. Well, I said it couldn't be me, because the movie I was in was called Grave Robbers from Outer Space. But I inquired and found out that the name had been changed. I am confident that the report that the Baptists insisted on the changing of the name of Grave Robbers from Outer Space is an error. I never heard anything about it. Everyone that I knew was surprised when we learned that it had been changed.
It's possible Ed Reynolds did object to the title and didn't tell the investors, or the title was changed as the film changed hands from distributor to distributor. After a small private preview in March of 1957, the film was picked up by Distributors Corporation of America, which promptly went out of business. Plan 9 didn't see a wide release until July of 1959, when Valiant Pictures bought up DCA's library.
My friend, can your heart stand the shocking facts about grave robbers from outer space?
Plan 9 was premiered at the Carlton Theater down on Western, Southwestern, and I was taken there to, I was in full costume, and they had me backstage. I was eager to see the film, but they said, no, you wait in the wings here backstage, and when we tell you, you'll cross stage left. And so I did, and as I walked out, a large audience started booing and hissing and sending out jocular catcalls. I mean, really, lots of noise. Well, then they explained to me, the people backstage, that every time the big character was appearing on screen, the little three-dimensional one was just strutting across the stage, and it looked so funny to the folks in the audience.
Ed was in the height of his glory at the premiere showing. He was exuberant. He was happy. He introduced the characters. He introduced Mrs. Lugosi. I think he introduced all of them but me.
People turning south from the freeway were startled when they saw 3 flying saucers high over Hollywood Boulevard.
Plan 9 had a few showings across the country as part of various double bills, but the film wouldn't reach the height of its glory until it began showing on television.
Plan 9 played every station on local television. Started from CBS down to local TV, and 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. Ed, we're on! Turn Channel 9 on, Channel 13 on. Because he stayed up all night long writing scripts, and the minute Plan 9 was on, he called up everybody. And I was on the top of the list to watch Plan 9. He was very happy with Plan 9. He loved it. And he rented it all the time and had Plan 9 parties.
After years of running on obscure late-night movie shows, a whole new audience discovered the film when brothers Harry and Michael Medved released their book, The Golden Turkey Awards, in 1980, 2 years after Ed Wood passed away, in which Ed was dubbed the worst director ever, and Plan 9 the worst movie ever.
We listed it as the worst film of all time, according to our readers of the 50 worst films of all time. And the underground cult became an above-ground cult.
But with the renewed attention to Plan 9 came a new appreciation for its uniqueness and creativity.
In addition to the reputation that Plan 9 has as being just sort of a crazy, nutty, bad movie, there are some legitimately effective shots in the picture. That famous bit where a vampire is coming at you with her hands, I mean, that actually was a very haunting shot.
It's interesting all the way through, and that's more than you can say for a lot of pictures, because to me the biggest sin a film can commit is being dull. And Plan 9, whatever it is not dull.
Why, a particle of sunlight can't even be seen or measured.
Can you see or measure an atom? Yet you can explode one. A ray of sunlight is made up of many atoms.
So what if we do develop this solanite bomb? We'd be even a stronger nation than now.
Stronger. You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid!
That's all I'm taking from you.
Get back here, you jerk! Let him finish.
Yes, it's your stupid minds, stupid. For all the science fiction films where the superior alien calmly explains how superior he is, let's call it the Michael Rennie approach, this guy is upset and freaked out as any human being would be, and then the human response is to punch the guy out. Now, that is a scene unlike anything else in the history of science fiction cinema. It resonates.
It's because of men like you that all must be destroyed. Headstrong, violent, no use of the mind God gave you.
You talk of God?
I mean, you go to college, you take courses in art and media, they tell you surrealism is important, existentialism is important, and then you see it right in front of your eyes in Plan 9 from Outer Space, a movie that achieves high art through sheer incompetence.
Whether through incompetence or ingenuity, raw filmmaking talent, or just dumb luck, Ed Wood cobbled together random footage of a dead horror legend, got funding from the Baptist Church, gathered a cast and crew, and made a movie we are still talking about 60 years later.
Very strange. Very strange, isn't it, to proceed with the movie even though the star is dead.
I kind of felt like I was in one of those old-time carnivals. It was just kind of a freaky, unusual, carny atmosphere.
He's probably looking down with a big smile, saying, gosh, I'm glad they like my movies, because I like making them.
God help us in the future.